Supreme showdown. The Trump administration says it is not done trying to block members of the migrant caravan from seeking asylum. We're at the White House. Pro-life momentum. A report from the Vatican on why there's new energy in the fight for the unborn in Italy. Box of Joy. A Catholic charity delivers Christmas gifts to children who live in poverty. How the faithful can help. And honoring the military. As our nation prepares for Thanksgiving, the Knights of Columbus show their thanks for our veterans and those killed in World War I. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, November 21st, 2018. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for News from a Catholic Perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee, in for Lauren Ashburn. The Trump administration will appeal a federal court decision which blocked the president's most recent immigration order. It targeted migrants seeking asylum in the United States. President Trump predicts he will eventually win at the Supreme Court. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. A U.S. District Court placed a one-month hold on the president's order. The White House calls it another example of an activist judge imposing their own open borders policy. Current law permits any migrant coming to the U.S. to seek asylum. The president wants to change the law so only migrants who come through a port of entry can seek asylum. But Catholic groups who work with migrants believe there's good reason to keep the law as is. Arriving in Florida to spend Thanksgiving, President Trump appears happy to see supporters. But before leaving the White House, his frustration was evident over a federal court decision blocking his asylum ban on migrants who cross the border illegally.
I'm going to put in a major complaint.
U.S. District Judge John Tiger ruled the president may not rewrite the immigration laws to impose a condition that Congress has expressly forbidden. The Trump administration will appeal that decision, and it will likely go before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has already ruled against several of the president's immigration policies.
It means an automatic loss, no matter what you do, no matter how good your case is. And the Ninth Circuit is really something we have to take a look at because it's not fair.
The president is seeking to change current law that allows any migrant, regardless of how they make it into the U.S., the chance to seek asylum.
This is designed to protect people who are at risk.
Rick Jones has spent 20 years living in Central America. He works with at-risk youth for Catholic Relief Services. Rick shares some of the reasons people are fleeing places like Honduras and El Salvador.
A lot of people are fleeing violence, whether that's from the gangs or from police, corrupt police and military officials, and they have a claim to asylum because they need protection. Other people are leaving because there are no opportunities to make a livelihood.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities USA, and the Catholic Legal Immigration Network released a joint statement this month calling the president's asylum order deeply concerning. They asked the Trump administration to seek other solutions to strengthen the integrity of the existing immigration system while assuring access to protection for vulnerable children and families. President Trump described Judge John Tiger, the one who has blocked his asylum order, as an Obama judge. Now, that didn't sit well with Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. He says the U.S. doesn't have Obama judges or Trump judges, Bush judges or Clinton judges. He says an independent judiciary is something we should all be thankful for. Wyatt?
Mark, is it unusual for the Chief Justice to comment on a case like this?
Yes, this is the first time the Republican-appointed leader of the federal judiciary has offered even a hint of criticism against President Trump. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. For the first time, President Trump has provided written answers to Special Counsel Robert Mueller's question. Investigators are trying to find out what the president knew about Russian interference in the 2016 election. Trump told reporters yesterday he was cooperating with the probe. By submitting written answers, he may avoid a potentially risky sit-down interview with prosecutors. The president also defends his daughter Ivanka over an email flap. She's accused of using a personal email account to conduct government business. The president says it's not comparable to Hillary Clinton because Hillary had her own server and deleted thousands of emails. He says Ivanka's emails did not contain classified information. In her race to be Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi wins the support of her most likely opponent, Ohio Democrat Marcia Fudge. Pelosi named Fudge as incoming chair of an elections subcommittee. It will dig into voting rights access, a top priority for the new Democratic majority. And the Buffalo News reports another rival, Brian Higgins, has announced he will back Pelosi as well. Their endorsement will help Pelosi, who needs 218 votes for the House in January to become Speaker. Tuesday, Catholic Charities of Washington hosted their annual community Thanksgiving for those in need. The dinner served more than 200 guests.
Thanksgiving and Christmas begins by recognizing the human dignity of our homeless and those who are in need.
Dinners were served turkey with all of the trimmings plus pumpkin pie. Winter coats and toiletry kits were handed out, all provided by Pepco. The dinner also marks the end of the week-long recognition of the World Day of the Poor. Jeff Bezos, founder of online giant Amazon, is donating $15 million to Catholic charities. The money will go to the group's chapters in New Orleans, Tacoma, Seattle, and Miami. It's part of a donation of roughly $100 million to 24 nonprofits. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo backs President Trump, saying it is important to have Saudi Arabia as an ally.
It is the President's obligation, indeed the State Department's duty as well, to ensure that we adopt policies that further America's national security. So as the President said today, the United States will continue to have a relationship with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're an important partner of ours.
The administration is under pressure to take tougher measures against the kingdom following the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Dozens are killed in a suicide bombing in Kabul, Afghanistan. The attack yesterday targeted hundreds of clerics gathered at a wedding hall. A local ISIS affiliate is known to target minority Shiites and supporters of the U.S.-backed government. The Taliban has denied involvement. 4 Finland tourists have been arrested in Malaysia for distributing Christian materials on a resort island. The tourists are being investigated for allegedly causing disharmony and violating their visa status. Converting Muslims to other religions is forbidden in the country. Italy's government is giving new momentum to the pro-life movement in the country. The coalition is made up of members of 2 political parties, the populist Five Star Party and the Conservative League. The government is anti-establishment and has pushed back against the European Union. Some of its pro-family positions are providing hope to pro-life Italians. Vatican correspondent Juliet Lindley joins us from Rome. Juliet, what are the signs, indications this government is promoting pro-life, pro-family policies?
Wyatt, one salient move was the creation of a ministry for families. Now, it was previously only a department, but this government appointed Lorenzo Fontana as Minister of Family and Disability. Now, he's a practicing Catholic. He has very strong pro-life stance, and he doesn't support abortion, same-sex unions, or pro-LGBT education. Another member of the government is Matteo Salvini, and he is also pro-life, and he's defended the rights of the unborn and is against surrogate motherhood. Now, under their leadership, pro-life Italians are hoping pro-life legislation will be passed.
In March, the Italian city of Verona will be hosting the World Congress of Families. What can we expect from the event?
Wyatt, the choice of city is interesting because apart from being the native city of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, it is also Lorenzo Fontana's hometown. And last month, Verona declared itself to be a pro-life city. Now that means, for instance, public funding is provided to pro-life groups, and women who are experiencing unwanted pregnancies are encouraged to utilize adoption services. The World Congress of Families is an American group that seeks to defend the natural family and protect parental rights. It says that its mission is to help secure the foundations of society by building up the family. The last meeting was held in Moldova, and the Vatican Secretary of State Pietro Parolin gave a speech there, and the organizers of the Verona Congress are expecting him to do the same.
So then, generally speaking, what is the strategy, the overall strategy of the pro-family movement in Italy?
Wyatt, I spoke with Jacopo Koga. He's the president of an Italian group that promotes pro-life policies, and he's telling me that since this new government is pro-life and pro-family, rather than trying to overturn laws approved by the previous center-left government of Matteo Renzi regarding euthanasia and same-sex civil unions, their strategy is to be proactive in promoting family values and in spreading a new culture for life. Now, the decision to hold the Verona gathering would fall precisely within this framework.
Well, as you know, Italy legalized abortion in 1978. What is the current government's position on the issue of abortion?
Lorenzo Fontana, the current Minister for Families, says the law, which is known as Law 194, La 194, must be applied in its entirety. So the law tries to discourage abortions and only permits it as a last resort. Fontana means that abortion shouldn't be promoted or encouraged, and he says that he wants to offer women counseling services to dissuade them from having abortion. Now, the pro-life movement faces a lot of opposition in Italy. Many politicians say that they're committed to preventing pro-life legislation, and despite the deep Catholic roots of this country, Wyatt, the issue of abortion doesn't galvanize voters quite as much as it does in the United States.
Well, I know there's a lot of challenges to the pro-life movement, so I'm sure Catholics around the world will be praying for them. Juliet Lindley, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thanks for telling us about it.
Thank you, Wyatt.
The city of Venice was illuminated in red last night to express solidarity with persecuted Christians, including Asia Bibi. Bibi, a Catholic, was acquitted of blasphemy charges in Pakistan. In a message of support, Pope Francis said the event would draw attention to the, quote, serious problem of discrimination that Christians suffer in many parts of the world. Pope Francis will meet with young inmates and AIDS patients during his 2019 visit to Panama for World Youth Day.
Tus palabras son un sí, valiente, generoso.
The Holy Father will make the trip in January. In a video message released today, Pope Francis addressed all the young people of the world, believers and non-believers. He encouraged them to recognize their willingness to serve others. Coming up, analysis of the Trump administration's battle to deny asylum to the migrant caravan. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee, in for Lauren Ashburn. As you heard earlier in the broadcast, President Trump says he's frustrated by a court ruling that blocked his attempt to deny asylum to members of the migrant caravan. Joining me now for more analysis is John Gizzi, White House correspondent for Newsmax. John, welcome back to the program. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says that all necessary action will be taken to defend the administration's decision to refuse asylum to people who are entering illegally, and the White House says it will file an appeal. What are you hearing out of the White House?
Well, I'm hearing that the President and Secretary of Homeland Security Kirstjen Nielsen plan to go full speed ahead, just as Sarah Sanders said. In addition, the legal process is moving rapidly. If it has to go to the Supreme Court, they will get it there somehow. Right now, it's just coming out of the Ninth Circuit. This is the ruling by Judge Tiger that said the president cannot do so. So we are headed for an immediate conflict over this. I'm sure of one thing, that those Democrats who were elected to the new House of Representatives who use the I word, impeachment, are a bit more fueled by this right now.
Well, what do you think about the reaction on the other side, about Trump's base, many of whom very staunch on the immigration issue?
Well, the president knows this. He's a base-oriented politician, and I do believe this and the use of the military from the start will rally his base toward him. Many expected him to cave on this, citing the rulings in the court, and he's come back swinging on it, and that's what the base appears to like.
In the meantime, another possible government shutdown is looming. President Trump hasn't ruled one out, especially when it comes to funding for the border wall here. Do you think we're heading for a shutdown realistically, and what would that mean for both parties?
No, and I want to tell you why. For Republicans in Congress, allowing a government shutdown or even sounding supportive of it is akin to denying the Trinity. The fact is that shutdown, the S word, is something that Republicans have paid dearly for, going back to Ronald Reagan's administration, even when it's for just a few days. Republican presidents are blamed for it, and somehow Republicans in charge of Congress have been blamed for it. Bill Clinton got a new lease on life when the new Republican-controlled Congress permitted a shutdown from 95 to 96, and it finally acquiesced to the president on the budget. Ted Cruz has certainly been vilified by people in his own party because he forced a brief shutdown over the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. What does it all mean? No shutdown.
Yeah, no, don't want to take the political risk. I want to turn to other key news out of the White House, and that's the Republicans and Democrats alike are questioning Ivanka Trump over her use of personal emails to conduct official business. And of course, President Trump has said this is fake news and said this doesn't compare to Hillary Clinton. But what do you think about that? What's your take?
My own take on it is this. Because we have email, it has, unfortunately for some, limited the ability to leave one's work at the office and almost forced us to take work home because we can always send it in. Now, sometimes that means using a personal email. I do it all the time, but I don't work for the government. When you're a government official, it can be a problem, and one has to remember to access one's official email. Now, that said, I think this is going to lead to unintended consequences. Many members of Congress have told me they no longer do email. As convenient as it is, they've turned it over to their secretary, to their legislative assistants, but they do not deal with it themselves. Congressman Devin Nunes of California is a case in point. And they just simply do not want the hassle and the possible legal entanglement that comes from putting it down in writing without having time to think about it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this is not the last time we'll hear about the email situation.
I certainly agree with you.
Yeah. John Gizzi, White House correspondent for Newsmax. Thanks so much for your analysis.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and happy Thanksgiving to all out there in television land.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. The Archdiocese of Philadelphia says it is putting aside $25 million to start paying claims of clergy sex abuse. The Archdiocese says it expects it will need more money and it will borrow and liquidate assets. 6 of the state's 7 other dioceses are expected to set up compensation funds early next year. Altoona Johnstown says it set up a fund in 1999. A federal judge strikes down Mississippi's attempt to ban most abortions after 15 weeks, saying the law violates women's constitutional rights. It is unclear if the state's Republican governor will ask an appeals court to overturn the ruling. Up next, Pope Francis explains his foolproof way to avoid evil and how the faithful can deliver Christmas presents to the needy this year.
Impurità, furti, omicidi.
Pope Francis says following the 10 Commandments will open our hearts to God and free us from evil. At his weekly talk with pilgrims at the Vatican, the Holy Father says all sin is born of being selfish, and the Commandments teach us how to put others first. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee, in for Lauren Ashburn. Children around the world who live in poverty are not able to celebrate Christmas with family feasts and gift giving, but a Catholic charity is working to offer some children some Christmas joy. Cross Catholic Outreach organizes churches, schools, and groups across the U.S. in sending a box of joy with toys, school supplies, and practical items like soap, toothpaste, and toothbrushes to children living in poverty. This year, the group plans to reach 70,000 children in 5 countries. Joining us now from Cross Catholic Outreach is Senior Director Sandy Pino. Sandy, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. We're happy to be here.
I see we have a box of joy here on the set with us. Tell us a little bit about the children that you serve that will receive one of these. Tell us what kind of conditions do they live in?
These children live in desperate conditions, utter poverty. They are, of course, being helped by generous Catholics who are donating to the many projects that Cross Catholic supports, bringing food, water, housing, education, medical care, the urgent needs of the community. But these are children who live very, very sad, poor lives, and they probably have never received a Christmas gift before. So this is a beautiful way to make that happen as a symbol of God's love and celebrating the birth of Jesus.
It's the 5th year for the Box of Joy, and you've added additional country this year, El Salvador. What kind of response do you get from children and the families who receive these kinds of boxes?
The families are overjoyed. I know it's been described as a celebration, an explosion of joy in the communities when the children are receiving the boxes. I was actually at an orphanage where children received the boxes with a Knights of Columbus group last year, and it was so beautiful. It brought tears to everyone's eyes, and it made everyone who packed a box want to pack multiple boxes this year for children so that they could see this joy brought to children.
We're so fortunate here in the United States that we don't think about what it's like to go without during Christmas. In addition to these gifts, you also deliver not just toys, but also a spiritual message. Tell us about that and why it's so important to teach children about the faith.
Well, I think that's an essential part of the Box of Joy ministry. It is a children's evangelization ministry, and we include the story of Jesus and a rosary in every single box. And so it really is not just a Christmas present, it is a symbol of God's love, and it is sharing the joy of our Catholic faith.
How can groups participate in Box of Joy? What can they do to learn more about it?
Groups can go to boxofjoy.org and find out everything about the program, including resources, ways to pack a box and send it in the mail, or perhaps do a virtual box by Create a Box option where we'll pack a box and have it sent for you for a child to receive. And certainly as everyone is thinking about Christmas and thinking about what gifts they'd like to bless their own families with, we are praying that they will also bless a child or multiple children with a Box of Joy this season.
How much time do people have before in terms of taking the donations?
Through the end of the year, we can receive these boxes. We'll be sending them to a screening center in Miami where we'll be adding that story of Jesus and the rosary to every single box. And so as you are preparing for your own holiday season and purchasing gifts for your family and friends, we pray that you will bless a child with a Box of Joy.
What kind of gratification have you gotten from doing this, being involved in this project?
Well, it warms my heart. I have a special spot for children, and I have taken groups on mission trips and seen the places and the homes and the conditions under which these children live. And so I know that joy and just an easy life is not something that happens to them every day. They are joy-filled and they certainly are faith-filled, but I see that they really have nothing. And I know that they probably have never received a Christmas gift before. And so having that heart for children, wanting to be obedient to my Catholic faith, I know that this is something that we're called to do, to be generous, compassionate, and children certainly are an important part of bringing the message of joy of the gospel.
Such a powerful message and a wonderful program. Sandy Pino, Senior Director with Cross Catholic Outreach. Thanks so much for telling us about Box of Joy.
Thank you so much. Go to boxofjoy.org.
Okay.
Thanks.
Tomorrow, Americans celebrate Thanksgiving. While many spend the holidays with friends and family, not everyone will be able to come home. Tens of thousands in the military are deployed overseas, and the Knights of Columbus is honoring those currently serving and veterans with a special ceremony and Mass. Here at the St. John Paul II National Shrine in Washington, current and former members of the military come together in prayer. The Knights of Columbus hosted a ceremony and Mass earlier this month to honor the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. Carl Anderson, the Supreme Knight, says the commemoration encourages Americans to reflect on important questions.
Are we worthy? Are we living a life worthy as Americans for the sacrifice of so many who came before us?
Anderson pointing out the World War I uniform and helmets on display. But one of the most fascinating pieces is a crucifix. It belonged to Joyce Kilmer, a Catholic poet and writer who died in battle while serving in World War I.
He very much felt this sacrificial giving to his country and his fellow soldiers, and it comes right out of the heart of Catholicism. No greater love has a man than to lay down his life for his friends.
In remembrance of those who laid down their lives, a tolling of a bell. Kathy Thorpe, a captain in the Navy, had the honor. She says her Catholic faith plays an important role in her life as a veteran and reservist.
And all the experiences that along the way, whether it's being at the bedside of our wounded warriors or helping console a widow, my faith just kind of comes into play in everything that I do.
Thorpe says she's hoping to help other veterans grow in their faith. She's a volunteer for the Warriors to Lourdes pilgrimage, which brings wounded, ill, or injured U.S. military members to Lourdes, France. The Marian Shrine is known for its baths, where dozens of miraculous healings have been documented. Colonel Charles Galena helps organize the pilgrimage. Over the years, he's seen spiritual transformations.
Many of our warriors come with great family and marital problems because of all the separation and the struggle and the sacrifice on both the warrior, but even on the families even more so. And so this past year we saw two two families that were literally in divorce when they came to Lourdes and reaffirmed their vows before they left.
A reminder of how faith continues to strengthen our servicemen and women to this day. And as always, we thank the Knights of Columbus for its support of EWTN News Nightly. And we thank you for watching tonight. There will be special programming the rest of the week on EWTN. News Nightly will be back on Monday. I'm Wyatt Goolsbee. From our EWTN family to yours, we wish you a very happy Thanksgiving. Good night, and God bless.